Welcome back to Relationships Over Reps with Coach Johnny Parker and Coach Rich Lansky. I'm Rich Lansky, and with me is Coach Johnny Parker. A little bit of background. Myself, I've been involved in strength conditioning for the better part of 4 decades. I currently am coaching at the high school level down in Florida, but I have spent years at every other level as well. I spent years with USA Weightlifting, coaching internationally. I've coached in the private sector, both in sports performance and with rehabilitation. I spent some time at the collegiate club level. But with all my experience, it pales behind that of my co host, Johnny Parker. Coach Parker's coached at every single level over the last 5 decades, from middle school to the high school to collegiate level, all the way to the pros. He spent time with the New York Giants, the New England Patriots, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the San Francisco 49ers. And somewhere along the way, he was able to help his athletes achieve their dreams and achieve 3 Super Bowl rings. Coach, welcome.
Thank you very much, Coach. That was much too long an introduction of me.
Well, you
Coach,
deserve
on
it.
your business card, it has got more letters and certifications. I don't even know how you would remember all of those.
Just means I was bored and had some free time at some point on those transatlantic flights I used to take.
I don't think so.
Well, Coach, last time we talked a little bit about what authentic coaching was, the ideas behind relationships over reps. And today we want to talk about a couple of different pillars of coaching. And I'll start off with the question to you is, of all the abilities athletes have, what's the most important ability that athletes should have?
Coach, there's no question it's availability.
Agreed.
Coach
Which means,
Parcells used to tell the team the first night of training camp, if you're one of those guys that's always hurt and you're always in the training room and you can't practice, then I can't evaluate you. And if I can't evaluate you, I can't keep you.
can't make the club from the tub, right?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Well, once we move past availability, then we've got things a lot of people talk about: mobility, agility, flexibility. But today we're going to talk about other abilities. We're going to talk about reliability and accountability, both from an athlete perspective and our own perspective as coaches. So, Coach, what does accountability mean to you from something you would expect from your athlete?
And they have every right to expect it from me, but is doing the things you say you're going to do and doing the things you know that you should do
All right.
without fail. You can't be accountable sometime. That's an all the time uh, proposition there now.
I would agree. And like you said, it's they have every right to expect it from us, and we have every right to expect it from them. How do we develop that though? How do we develop that? How do they, somebody comes into a team from a different culture, a different perspective, a different set of rules and procedures, different expectations. How do you look at developing that accountability?
First of all, Coach, you don't say it this way, but you explain how the program is going to be run if they're a new player and what you expect of them, what they can. I start off with what they can expect of me,
There you
and
go.
then I tell them what I expect of them, and then if there's ever any point where they don't hold themselves accountable, then I step in and I step in pretty hard.
There's another term that I like to learn, and that's reliability. I think they go hand in hand, wouldn't you say?
I don't know the difference.
There you go. So I want
And
my athletes to know that they can rely on me to be the same guy every day. Even if I had a flat tire on the way to work one day, or I forgot to pay a bill and I was in a bad mood, or whatever had happened, or I stubbed my toe on the way into the weight room. As far as they're concerned, none of that's going to interfere with my ability to coach them to the best of my ability that day and give them 100% of my attention, my time, and my expertise.
any of those things that you mentioned are excuses for doing less than your best or giving your athletes your best.
I once had a coach tell me in high school that excuses are justifications for failure.
That's exactly right.
You could have a
I've
great
never heard that,
excuse.
but that is so true.
You could have a great excuse. My car broke down, but it still got in the way of you failing to follow through with what you were supposed to do that time.
Coach Parcells used to tell the team, hey, don't tell me you're late because of traffic. Leave early enough to where you're going to beat traffic, or the
There you go.
weather, to leave early enough to where traffic hadn't peaked yet. Being late because of traffic or a flat tire, none of that is an acceptable excuse for being late.
I saw a great bumper sticker the other day on a car, and it said, "Just because you woke up late or didn't plan accordingly, doesn't mean that you should be riding my butt. Slow down."
That's a good point. Good
But
point.
when we get back to reliability, can you think of any time when you had an athlete at any level? Could be middle school, could be the professionals, but at any level that you realized how important you being reliable and you being accountable to them was?
Coach, I don't know, but I have been told this, that my players didn't want to let me down. They didn't want to disappoint me. Now, I don't know that that's true, but I've had, some players tell me that, and Dwayne Carlisle, who we we worked together in San Francisco, he told me that. So maybe there's a little bit of truth in it. But Coach, I'll tell you, uh, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest example of reliability or dependability or accountability came in Tampa when in the off season, uh, Shelton Quarles, a linebacker, played at Vanderbilt. He was to be there at 8 o'clock, and he was a little late. And he was a great kid, and he was a warrior. So I wasn't going to jump him. And he said, "Coach, I'm sorry I'm late, but my wife delivered our baby at 4:30 this morning." Now, Coach, that's pretty good. That's
That
pretty
is pretty good.
reliable and dependable. And he said, I hadn't slept. Then he
That's
said, that's an excuse. I'm here and I won't give it everything I got.
I think that goes a lot with what we were talking about. That this is a two-way street. The coach-athlete relationship. It's built on these things like a lot reliability and accountability. That we can be accountable to them. They're going to get the same guy every day that cares about them, and that they can be accountable to us. We're going to get the same level of effort that the expectations are holding for them. But I think it goes to a bigger word. I mean, when you combine all this stuff, I'm thinking the word trust.
Absolutely. Coach, it takes a long time to develop trust, but a second to destroy it. And once trust is destroyed, then, you'll probably never get it back. And let me give you an example of trust and of a player developing trust. When we came to New England, I think they had won something like 8 games in 3 years, something like that. They were awful. But we had a left tackle, Bruce Armstrong, who made, I think, 7 Pro Bowls. And he was a darn good player. Anyway, Coach Bruce had seen so many bad coaches and so many bad players come through that we were going to have to prove ourselves to him. So he never said that, but you could read it. And he was somewhat standoffish from all of us. Well, you know, Coach Parcells, I used to say to him, "Coach, you hate this guy. Why don't you cut him?" And he said, "I can't cut him till I can replace him." Well, about our third year in New England, we had gained Bruce's trust. And on Monday morning, Coach Parcells would always be out in front of his office. And then, speaking to players, kidding them about something or saying, "Don't y'all ever practice tackling over there in your group? Because you missed it." Anyway, when Bruce would come in, Coach Parcells would say, "All right, come here, Army." And they would go into Parcells' office, and Parcells would tell him what was important for that week for us to win the game. And Bruce would go down and spread that among the players. He went from hating us to being Parcells' courier or messenger in the locker room. And he didn't say, hey, Parcells just told me we got to do this. He'd say, look, I know this team, they have got this guy that we got to do something about him. We got to neutralize him. Just what special teams. We've got to get an edge on special teams for this game. Just things like that. And because of Bruce's stature, you know, 7 Pro Bowls, the players listened. That was
Sure.
much, that was very, maybe more influential than what Parcells would tell the team. But don't tell Coach I said that.
Too
But
late. You just told everybody about it.
uh,
But
anyway,
I can see that. We had an athlete I remember came in his senior year. This is at the high school level, and not sure how many years ago it was, but he had had a terrible experience with both the strength conditioning coach that he had before, as well as the head coach where he was, and he had been, I guess, in his words, he had been lied to. They weren't honest with him. They didn't appreciate him for who he was. So with him, when he came in, he said, I really don't need to do this. I'm just here to play. And, well, of course, you know me. That's not the way we do things. You don't just show up on Friday night and play. But it took me a while. And what I found is I didn't talk anything about football with this kid for the first 3 weeks. I talked about family, talked about his favorite TV shows, talked about his favorite rap group. We talked about different things that he might want to do. It took him a while, but he started to say, Coach, why don't you ever ask me about, the runs or the lifts? I said, everybody's going to run, everybody's going to lift. I want to know something about you. And he looked at me kind of funny, but we kept talking, and little things. And I'd bring things up so that he knew that I was actually paying attention, not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions. Because, if you're not going to be authentic and you're not going to actually care about what somebody says to you, you may as well be talking to a wall. But over time, he'd start asking me, hey, Coach, are we going to clean today? Can I go a little heavier on squats? He started getting into the program itself. And just because those first 3-4 weeks of that summer, we didn't talk anything about football. We talked about everything but. And I
way to go, Coach.
found some hot buttons. I found some commonalities. I mean, he appreciated my not extensive but considerable knowledge about 1980s early happy rap, I call it. And comparing it to some of the music that they were listening to now. I think this was about 2011 or 12. But that athlete and I still keep in touch via email and text every so often. And like I said, like in the same way as your situation, not the same level, he came in and he had no inkling to try to buy into a different system.
Time out right there. You talk about a different level. Now, did you help that kid make his dreams come true?
I hope so. He graduated, went on to
Yeah,
college,
well,
and played
that
ball.
would be if you ask me that question, the answer would be the same. Now, what difference does it make whether you're helping a pro player make his dreams come true or a middle school player make his dreams come true? What's the difference? Because there is no level. It's all about helping your kids become better people. And there's no age limit on that, up or down.
I can see that, and I agree with that. Whether you're working as a personal trainer or as a sport coach, or whether you're working at the top level, I think, like you just said, it has to do with the relationship that you build with that athlete and you helping them achieve their dreams. Last podcast, we talked a little bit about a coach being somebody that can help somebody get from point A to point B, get from where they are to where they want to be. And I think you just gave me a valuable reminder of that.
Coach, can I tell you another story about trust and reliability and dependability, all of that stuff. But
Please.
trust, Coach. Again, I'm going to use Bruce Armstrong as an example. When we would stretch, Coach, to begin to practice, they'd go over and back, and then I'd be on the 50, and offense would be on the 45 and 40, and defense on the other 45 and 40. Anyway, Bruce always stretched close to the boundary, and that's where Coach Parcells was standing. And Bruce said, whenever we would uh, go down to the ground, we ended the standing stretches part of the warm up and go to the ground. And Parcells would, no, he didn't say Parcells. He said that SOB, would come over and tap my shoe with his shoe. And he would say, "You got this guy, Army?" And I would say, "Yeah, I got him, Bill." And then he said, and he was talking to me now, he said that SOB was putting the pressure on me because if I said I had him, and Monday and Tuesday is when the coaches finalize the game plan. He said that I knew if I said I got him, that there would be no plan for anybody to help me with him. And in 1994, we set an NFL record by throwing it 704 times. Bruce Armstrong gave up 0 sacks, and he had 0 help on a single one of those passes. So it's a pretty good player and a
Impressive.
darn good guy, even though he's ornery and grouchy and all. But Bruce and I are pretty close.
Well, like with anything else, coaching, working, teaching, whatever you do, to be really good at it, you need to work at your craft and you need to find what works. But most of all, you need to be able to deal with people. And that comes back to what we've been talking about, relationships. I think when you look at your athletes, especially, let's say, not just on the field, but let's say in the weight room, and you look at your athletes and you know that they are being held accountable and they are reliable to do the things you want to do. You don't have to go ahead and run around policing and checking that this guy's doing the right amount of reps, this guy's doing the right percentage. I think once you get to that point, the system tends to run itself in a lot of ways, or the players
It does.
will work themselves and hold each other accountable. And I think when those players hold each other accountable, it makes our job as coaches a lot easier too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And coach, I couldn't agree with you anymore. And that is Nirvana. That's Camelot. When you got
Camelot. There we go.
players that hold
Little
each other accountable.
little Arthurian legend, the round table. Everybody's equal. Nobody's at the head of the table. But
Well, Parcells was at the head of our table, but I know the rest of us were kind of in the very much at his ankles and feet.
there you go. But I do think when you talk about it, if I have a great relationship with one of my weightlifters, and we're at the World Championships, but I can't walk out onto the platform with him or her. But when they walk out, I want them to know that I've done everything in my power to help them achieve the things that they are capable of. And they should be confident in the fact that they've done everything that I've asked them to do. And I'm not ever going to lie to an athlete. I'm never going to tell them that, oh, you can lift this when there's no chance that they could because maybe it's 140% of their max that day, but maybe they can one day. But yet, I think the honesty goes a long way in that trust too, don't you?
Of course. And coach, um, I just remember all the time that Parcells put into creating situations to allow him to either get on guys or groups that weren't performing up to standard, and he knew they could do better.
I got a saying sometimes with our guys. Um, when I hold them accountable if they're drifting a little bit and they get a little upset in the beginning, that I'm on them and I say to them, I said, if I am asking you to do better, there's a couple of reasons why. It's because I know you can do better. It's because I rely on you to do better. And because I would not be the coach that you want me to be if I let you slack, because that would show up somewhere else where you would maybe not perform at your best. You could get hurt or you could not achieve your goals. And neither one needs to happen. So again, coach, we never want to get to that spot where we stop talking to our players, which
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, coach, over time, what you talk to them about, it changes. If they're warriors, you express your appreciation to them and your admiration for them. And but coach, if there is a player that does something that you're just not going to tolerate, then you call them into your office, look them in the eye, and say in a firm but non-threatening voice, that has to change. And then you have to get a well, what would you say, a promise from them that they understand and they're going to correct that unacceptable behavior. Now, coach, sometimes when they tell you that, then a few days later they slip and do the same thing again. And then I just tell them, I made a big mistake with you and I want to apologize. What are you talking about, coach? I'd say, my mistake was that I thought your word meant something. And wait a minute, coach, it does. And then I'd say, well, you said you weren't going to do whatever again. And here it is a week later, and you're doing it again. So your word doesn't mean much to me. And coach, they didn't like that, but it's the truth, and it's something they needed to hear.
well, I
And
think
I
that's
think that is a non-confrontational way of saying that this the standard in here has not changed, and it's not going to change, and you're going to have to meet it. I intend to meet your standard, but you have to meet mine.
and I know you can also say that athlete, I know that you're capable of that. I know you want to be in that place because I know that you can meet that expectation, you can meet that standard. So I'm going to hold you to it. So
Absolutely.
you're
Absolutely.
we're challenging them, but we're challenging them in a non-confrontational way, and we're kind of pushing it away in almost a positive by saying, "I know you're capable of doing this. Now it's just a matter of doing it."
Yes. Yeah. And something I used to say to players, not all the time, because you can wear it out, you can wear any saying out, but I would say to a player sometime, what really disappoints me about you is that my expectations for you are much higher than your expectations for yourself. And, you know, they don't like hearing that, and they'll want an explanation from you, which is good. Then you explain it. I expected that you could do this or you were capable of this, and I don't see it. So that helps them. And I know this from experience, that makes them determined to meet that expectation, or makes them more determined to meet your expectation for them, uh, and to get their expectation level up there.
Agreed.
Sometimes I tell players, get your expectations up because they're not high enough. You're capable, and that now this would be as a team, I would tell them, or in small groups or individuals. Your expectations aren't high enough. I've been around, I've ridden around the world 3 times on a terrapin's back. I've seen a lot. I know what you're capable of, and you're not doing it.
And that, even though it can be looked at negative, it's not negative because you're telling that athlete that you see so much more in them, so it becomes a positive. Like that.
Absolutely.
Before we sign off today, I want to go back to something you just had talked about when you said you would ask that player to come and talk to you private. I think that's also important for trust, is praise in public, but criticize or discipline in private.
Absolutely.
I
No
think that's
question.
extremely important in certain cultures and certain demographics, because if you were to go dress down an athlete or call them out in a way that belittles them in front of their peers, in a lot of environments, if they don't snap back at you, if they don't respond back in like manner, they're going to lose face or lose part of their reputation. And
Exactly.
you're pretty much painting them into a corner. And that never, nothing ever goes well when you put a kid into a corner or an athlete into a corner where they only have one way to respond, and that's in a negative fashion. So we need to be smart about how we praise, and we need to be smart about how we discipline.
Of course, coach, one thing about experience is after a while, you just know what is the right thing to do in this circumstance. You just know. And so you just do it instead of going home and tossing and turning all night over it and to come up with the same conclusion. After a while, you just know.
Right.
And there is no hesitation.
I would agree with that. And I think that if, like I talked about earlier when I said, the reason I'm on you, or the reason I'm holding your feet to the iron, so to speak, or that I am exhorting you to do more, raise your expectations, is because basically I'm invested in you. I love you. I want you to succeed. And if I backed off, I did not hold you accountable, I did not push you when you needed to be pushed, or pull you up when you needed to be pulled up, or kind of directed you if you kind of were veering off the road. If I didn't do that, then I'm not holding up my end of the bargain as an athlete coach relationship and being invested
Yeah,
in you and invested in you achieving success.
I would be cheating you, and you need to call me out on it. If you ever see it or suspect it, call me out because I owe you my best, and you deserve to get my best.
I
So
remember. No, I
go
agree with
ahead.
that. I remember one of the athletes that was new to our program one time said, uh, you know, why do we do all this stuff? And they were talking about certain exercises. And I explained, I said, by the way, you can ask me anytime why we do something. And if I can't tell you how it's going to help you achieve your goals and be better on Friday night, you don't have to do it. And
That's exactly
he
right.
looked at me, he said, are you serious, coach? I said, I'm serious, because I'm not going to put a bunch of fluff in there or throw just a bunch of stuff on the board for no reason. We're going to do things that help you and help each other and your teammates. And as such, hopefully get better as a team and achieve our goals, both individual and as a group.
Everything that I do in this room is designed to help you reach your potential, to help the team win more games. And then in your next contract, you'll be able to do more for your mama. You can have a charity that you contribute to, but mainly you get the satisfaction of knowing that you gave it everything that you possibly could.
I forgot who it was, but I think it might have been Paul Jackson. I heard say this one time, and he said something like, two types of guys. They're uh, glad I did and wish I did. And you
You
go
know
back,
what?
you don't want to go back and say, man, I wish I worked a little harder as I got ready for the Pan Am Championships. Man, I wish I sticked a little closer on my sleep and my nutrition. Man, I wish I hadn't skipped that one workout or that last set. Um, you know, as opposed to, I'm glad I gave it 100%. I'm glad I made every workout. I'm glad I followed my dad. I'm glad I skipped watching that all binge stuff on Netflix and I got 8 hours of sleep that week or that night.
Oh,
So
that's a great saying.
yeah, I
I'm
think I
glad
stole
I
it from him.
did.
I
I wish.
wanted to throw. I wanted to throw it out there because I'm pretty sure I stole it from him when I heard him say in an interview. But I'll tell you what,
Say it one more time, the way you said it to me.
I said, you look back on your life, and there are those guys that say, or those girls that say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I did.
Okay, I'm glad I did, and I wish I did. Got it.
Oh, yeah.
Coach,
So,
I'm stealing that from you.
and right now, Coach, I'm glad we actually got this Zoom thing working today, and we got it done because God knows it took us a little bit technologically. Two of us are like cavemen with the Flintstone mobile and those square stone wheels. Everybody else is flying ultralights. But
Coach,
Coach, I
thank you so
cannot
much
wait.
for having me. And it's always an honor and a pleasure to be included in something with you.
Well, the feeling is mutual. And one thing I do want to say, next time I'm really looking forward to our next topic because when we get back, we're going to talk about something we both feel very strongly about, and that is the eye of the coach.
Coach, I can't wait.
I'll talk to you soon, my friend. For Coach Johnny Parker and myself, Rich Lansky, thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel, send us some messages, give us some ideas and some topics you'd like us to cover. I know we do have a couple guests coming up at the end of the month, so we're hoping you enjoy their intake and their perspective on things as we delve into authentic coaching and how it can help you as a coach and your athletes as athletes and build a relationship between the two of you that helps you both achieve success. Take care.
See you, Coach.